We're in the Gemara and Daf Kuf Lamed Gimel Lamed Beis. We're starting at the end of the line, towards the bottom of the Yamud, where it says Moitzitzin v'chulu. One of the things that you do for a bris, even when it's on Shabbos, as it said in the Mishnah, there's Mayelin, there's Peirin, and Moitzitzin. Moitzitzin, you have to draw out the blood from the Mokem Amila. Says the Gemara, Amarav Papa, Hai Umne Deloy Mayitz, a Mayel that does not do Mitzitze, does not draw out the blood, Sakanahu. It's a danger for the baby. And we do not allow him to do bris. Fragt the Gemara, Pshita, of course this is so. If this is one of the things that we are Machal Shabbos, to do it on Shabbos, it must be because it's a sakana. Answers the Gemara, no, it's not necessarily a proof. Mao de Teime, I would think, Hai Dam Mifket Pocket. The blood that's there is there in that place, and it's like blood that's being contained in a vessel. It's not absorbed in the flesh of the baby, and therefore it's not something which is a sakana. Kamash Malan, so therefore he was teaching me over here that chiburi michper, that actually the blood is absorbed in the aver of the baby, and therefore when you do mitzitze, you're drawing out the blood, and it creates a chabura, and the only reason it's allowed is because it's a sakana if you don't do this. And Gemara brings that ayah to this. V'dumye de ispelonis. This is similar to what it says in the Mishnah that you're allowed to put an ispelonis, which is a bandage, v'kamoin, and cumin, which is used as a herb to heal the baby. Ma ispelonis v'kamoin kiloyovid. If this is not done, sakanahu. This is something which is a danger. Af hachanami. So too when it comes to doing mitzitze, drawing out the blood, kiloy ovid sakanahu. If you will not do it, it's a sakana, and that is the reason why it's allowed to be done on Shabbos. Sagt the Gemara, the next thing it said in the Mishnah, that you can place this bandage, this ispelonis, on the baby on Shabbos. Omar Abaye, Omar Ali Aim, my mother told me. Now Abaye, doesn't refer to his mother, it refers to a nurse that raised Abaye. Ispelonisa, the kulun kivi, the bandage for all pains, shev minoi tarba, it's 7 parts made from oil or from fats, v'chada kira, and 1 part from wax. Rava Omar, Rava says, kira v'kal bereshina. The bandage for all pains is a combination of fats and kal bereshina, which is resin. Darsha Rava ben Mechuzah, Rava said this publicly in Mechuzah to everybody, to know that this is the bandage used for pains. Karinu b'nei minyumi asya lemanayu. So the family of Minyumi, the doctor, tore their clothing. They were upset that now this refuah was exposed to everybody and they're going to lose business. Amalahu. So Rava told them, Shafki l'chuchada. I left something, one refuah, as a secret that people don't know. And what is that? The Amar Shmuel, Haiman the Moshi Ape, a person that washes his face, v'lo nogiv tuva, and he doesn't wipe it himself well. Nikturule chaspanisa, he will get a breakout on his face with boils or with a rash on his face. Mai takante. So what's the healing for such an individual? Limshi tuve b'mai desilke. He should wash himself well with water that beets were cooked in. The next thing it said in the Mishnah was loy shachak me'erev Shabbos. If you did not grind the cumin from before Shabbos, so the Mishnah says you grind it with your teeth. And if you did not mix the wine and the oil that they used to mix together to use for the bris, to soothe the baby with it or to heal the baby with it, so then you have to put each one separately, the wine and the oil separately on the baby. Ton Rabbana, we learned in Abraise, Dvarim she'ein oisen l'mila b'Shabbos, things that cannot be done for the bris on Shabbos, oisen lo b'Yom Tov, it could be prepared on Yom Tov. You're allowed to crush this kamoin, and you're allowed to mix oil and honey on Shabbos, on Yom Tov, that is. These are things that are allowed to be prepared on Yom Tov because these are things that can be used for Eichel Nefesh. So if you can use it on Yom Tov for Eichel Nefesh, you're allowed to prepare it for the bris as well. Amalei Abaye le Rav Yosef. So Abaye asked the question to Rav Yosef, Ma'ishno kamen b'Yom Tov t'chazi l'gdeira. Reason why you're allowed to crush this cumin on Yom Tov is because it can be used as a spice in a pot. Yayim v'shemesh chazin ami b'Shabbat l'chayla. If so, on Shabbos you should be allowed to mix the oil and wine together to use for the bris because it's allowed to be done on Shabbos for any sick person. The Tanya we learned in Abraise. Ein Torfin Yayin V'Shem L'Chayla B'Shabbos. The Tanna Kama says you're not allowed to mix oil and wine for a sick person on Shabbos. You are allowed to mix wine and oil on Shabbos for a sick person. Once Rab Meir himself was not well, he had a stomach pain. We wanted to mix for him oil and wine together to soothe it. He didn't allow us. We said to him, your own opinion should not be kept in your lifetime. Why don't you follow your own opinion that says that this is allowed? And Rab Meir answered, even though this is my opinion, and my friends are the ones that disagree with me, my whole lifetime, I did not have the courage to transgress on the words of my friend, and I'm stringent with myself to follow their opinion that this is not allowed. So the Gemara concludes, Who knew the machmar nafshay? Rab Meir was machmar for himself. But otherwise, for everyone, we paskin like Rab Meir, and it would be allowed to mix oil and wine on Shabbos to be used for a chayla. So why can't it be used for a bris as well? Answers the Gemara, Hasam loiboy leka. Over there, when it's being used for a chayla, it does not have to be beat so well together. But hacha, over here, to be used for the bris, boy leka, has to be beat very, very well, mixed very, very strongly, and that's not allowed. So why does it say in the Mishnah that you have to put the wine separately and the oil separately, so you could mix it together and not beat it together so strongly, like it's done on Shabbos, for any chayla? And for the Gemara, that's taka what the Mishnah meant. When the Mishnah says you put a wine separately and oil separately, it doesn't literally mean separately, it means that it could be mixed together, even if it's not mixed together well, like it's done on Shabbos for any chayla. The Gemara is going to here bring some other halachas, where there was a discussion between Abaye and Rav Yosef, just like before there was a discussion here between Abaye and Rav Yosef regarding certain halachas on Yom Tov. We learned in you're not allowed to sift mustard seeds in the sifter that's used for this. Right? So what happens is the seeds fall down below and the husks remain on the top. You're also not allowed to take a coal and place it inside of a pile of mustard seeds, and this somehow sweetened the mustard seeds through the fire, the coal inside, then it would extinguish inside, so you're extinguishing on Yom Tov, it's not allowed to be done. Amalei Abaye le Rav Yosef. So Abaye asked Rav Yosef regarding this brayse, when we say over here that you're not allowed to sift the mustard seeds, what's the difference from this Mishnah that's here in Masechta Shabbos later, that it says, you're allowed to put an egg into a mustard seed sifter, and what this was used for is the egg was placed, a raw egg was placed into the sifter, and the yellow of the egg would come through the sifter and it would color the mustard, give it the color yellow, and the white would remain on the top. So this is allowed to be done even on Shabbos. It's not considered to be sifting. So why do we say that with the mustard seeds, you're not allowed to sift it on Yom Tov? When it comes to putting the egg, it's not called bairer, because it's liquid and it could all come through, so it doesn't look like bairer. So that's why that's totally allowed. But hacha, when it comes to mustard seeds that you put into a sifter, mechzika bairer. The mamish looks like bairer. The seeds fall down and the husks remain on the top. The Gemara, however, does use the term mechzika bairer, that it looks like bairer, but it's not mamish bairer. The reason is because even the husks that remain on the top are also roy la'achila. So you're not really separating psailes from eichel. They're both roy to be used, to eat, to be eaten. But it's still mechzika bairer, that's why it's not allowed. In the Braise it says you're not allowed to place a coal inside a pile of mustard seeds to sweeten the mustard seeds. But we learned in another Braise that you could sweeten it with this coal placed inside, even though you're extinguishing the coal on Yom Tov. Answers the Gemara, loy kashya. When we're speaking about a gacheles, a coal that's a metal coal that becomes very, very hot, that is allowed to be extinguished on Yom Tov. Because even when you extinguish it, it doesn't turn into a coal that could be used later. But if you're extinguishing a fire in a wooden a piece of wood, that turns into a piece of coal that's then useful as a coal, and that's not allowed. Abai asked a question to Rav Yosef. Why over here do we say that you're not allowed to place the coal inside of the mustard seeds? Because you're going to extinguish the coal. Why is this any different from a person that's roasting meat on top of coals, and even though it oozes out the fats onto the coals and it extinguishes the coals, it's still allowed? So what's the difference? On Yontif, you're allowed to do it. Lo eichel nefesh, for the purpose of eichel nefesh, you're allowed to extinguish the fire of the coals on Yontif. Amalei hasam loy efsher. In the case of roasting meat, it's impossible to make it in advance. If you roast the meat in advance, it's not going to be fresh. But hacha efsher, regarding the mustard seeds, to sweeten it with the coal that they placed inside, that's something that's possible to be done before Yontif. Amalei Abai asked Rav Yosef another question regarding Yontif. Ma'o legabin. How about making cheese on Yontif? Amalei oser. So he told him it's not allowed. You're not allowed to make cheese on Yontif. You learned already before. Making cheese on Shabbos is a tale of baina. So this is something that's not allowed to be done on Yontif. So he asked him the question, Amalei, so he asked him, Milisha. What's the difference from kneading? Kneading to bake a challah on Yontif is allowed. So if kneading is allowed, so why shouldn't you be allowed to make cheese for eichel nefesh, to be able to eat the cheese on Yontif? So he answered him similar to what we said before, Hasam loy efsha. To bake a challah, if you're baking it a day before, it's not going to be fresh. So that's why they allowed it to be baked on Yontif itself and to knead it on Yontif. But hacha, with the cheese, efsha. The cheese should have been made from before. That's something that's not allowed to be made on Yontif. It's not eichel nefesh that's necessary for today. It could be prepared from before. Frag the Gemara, but v'ha'amri Nerdoi said, Givina bas yoyme ma'alya. Fresh cheese that was made today is very good. So it's not the same if you made it before, so you can't say it could have been made before. It's not going to be as fresh. And for the Gemara, that's not what he meant. Hachi ka'omri. This is what Nerdoi meant. Givina bas yoyme ma'alya. Even if it was made today, it could also be eaten. But it's better. The cheese is even better if it's older. So therefore, there's no reason to wait to make it on Yontif itself. So you can make it before. It's not Deichi Yontif. The next thing we learned in the Mishnah is that you're not allowed to make the l'chatchila. You're not allowed to prepare this kind of a band-aid that they would place on top of the bris on Shabbos. Okay, so the Gemara now will speak about the bandages for the bris and other different things about healing the baby. Omar Abaya said, Omrali Aim, my mother told me. So again, this is not Abaya's mother. This is the nurse that raised Abaya. Hi Chalukti Yanuka, this little shirt-like bandage that was placed on top of the bris. So lepanya lesetroi leiloi, you should fold over the seams of this bandage on top, because the seams or the rough edges of it, where there are threads sticking out, should not attach itself to the body of the baby. Why? Because dilma midbak garde minei, a thread could attach itself to the body of the baby, and vasili de krus shavcha, and then when you take it off, it could pull off a part of the body of the baby, and the baby could become a krus shavcha, and that it will be mutilated. It will not be able to have children. So you have to be very careful that the band-aid that's put should be properly done. Abaya's mother or Abaya's nurse of the kisise lepalga, she would make this kind of a lining for half of this bandage. It's going to be on the place of the bris, so that it shouldn't, no threads should get attached and should not pull off any flesh that shouldn't come off. Amar Abaya said, "Hi, yenuka de lesle chaluk." The baby that does not have a chaluk, this shirt-like bandage prepared for it, laisi belisa. You should bring a rag of something, the islay sifsa, that has a hem, because you want to be able to tighten it so it shouldn't fall off. V'likriche lisifsa letatoi, and the hem should be tightened on the bottom, away from the place where the bris is. So the hem itself should not, the threads of the hem should not stick to the place of the bris itself. V'ayef le'iloi, and you should fold it over on the top, any of the hem, that it should not touch the place of the bris, as we said before. Omar Abaye, another thing Abaye said, Omrali Aim, the nurse that raised Abaye said, Ha Yenuke, the lo Yedia Mafiktei, when you have a child, a baby that's born, and the rectum of the baby that has to have an opening for the baby to be able to relieve itself, right? So the opening is not there. You don't see where the opening is. So how do you know where it is? L'shayfe mishcha, you anoint the baby with oil, and then v'loik melahadi yoime, you stand them up in the sun. V'heched the zig, and over there where you see the space where it's sort of transparent, so you know that that's where the opening is. Likre b'sa'arta, you should tear it open with the point of a barley. Shesi ve'erev, a cross-like opening. And so that's how you'll be able to open it up. Aval b'klimatches loit, to tear it open with a metal tool, with a metal utensil, you shouldn't do that. Mishum dezarif, because it could cause swelling, it could cause inflammation. Omar Abaye said another thing in the name of the mother that raised him. Omar li aim. Ha yenuke delay mayitz, a baby that's not nursing well, not sucking well. What happened? What's the cause? Maker hudekar pume. His lips are chilled. He's cold, and therefore he can't suck. So ma'ite kante. So what's the healing for this? Leise kisse gumri. You should bring a platter of coals, v'likne leilahadi pume, and put it there near his mouth, near his lips. The chayim pume, and his mouth will warm up, his lips will warm up, umayitz, and he'll be able to suck, and he'll be able to feed. Amar Abaye said another thing. Amar Ali aim. The mother that raised me said, Ha yenuka deloy menashte. A baby that is not breathing like a regular person. You put your hand by the chest and you don't see the chest beating or the breathing like a regular person. Linfefei benafevasa, you should fan the baby with a fan, umenashte, and it'll breathe well. Amar Abaye said, Amar li aim, the mother that raised me said, Ha yenuka deloy ma'avi, a baby that's not breathing strong enough. Leisi salisa de ime, you should bring the afterbirth of the mother, v'lishreke elavei, and slip it on the body of the baby, uma'avi, and it'll breathe properly. Amar Abaye said another thing. Amar li aim, the mother that raised me said, Ha yenuke, the cotton, a baby that's emaciated. Laisi lisilta de ime, bring the afterbirth of the mother, v'lishreke elavei, and you should slide it on the body of the baby, mikutne le'ulmer, from the narrow part of this afterbirth to the wider part. And that's a sgula to the baby should grow big. V'i olim, and if the baby is bloated and it's not healthy, it's bloated, me'ulme lekutne, you slide it on the body of the baby from the wider part to the narrower part. Amar Abaye said, Amar li aim, the mother that raised me told me, Ha yenuka the sumak, a baby that has very red skin. Well, what does that mean? Da kati lo ivle beidama, the blood of the baby is not yet absorbed in the flesh. So lisrichalei ad ivle beidama, you should wait until the blood gets completely absorbed in the body, and then v'limalua, then you can make a bris. The yaroik, a baby that's yellow, va'akati lo nofel beidama, and the blood is not absorbed. There's not blood there absorbed in the body. The blood has not become, it's not fully blooded. Lisrchu ad nofel beidama v'limalua. So you should also wait until the baby has the full redness of the blood that it needs to be able to survive, to be able to make the bris. The Tanya, we learned in Abraise, Omer Rab Nosson. Rab Nosson said, Pam achas halachti lekrachi ayam, I once traveled to a place overseas. Uvasa isha achas lefanai, and a woman came to me and she said to me, Shemalab na rishayin meis, she made one bris for one child and he passed away. And Shani Ames, a second child, and he passed away. Shlishi, Heviyasil Afanai, the third baby she brought to me. Re'isiv Shu Adam, I saw the baby was red. Amartilos, I said to her, Amtini Layachi Yivla Beidame, wait until the blood gets absorbed in the body. Himtinu Layachi Nivla Beidame, she waited until the blood was absorbed. Umala Isai, and she made the bris, V'chaya, and he lived. V'hayukairin Isai, Nasan Abavli al Shmi, and they called him Nasan Abavli on my name because I saved his life. Shuv pamachas, another time, alachti lemedinas Kaputkiya. I came to the country Kaputkiya. Ubas isha achas lefane, a woman came to me and said, Shamal abna rishon umeis. She made a bris for one child that died, and sheni umeis, another child that died. Now shlishi, the third child, eviyase lefanai, she brought him in front of me, and reisav shu yorek, I saw that the baby is yellow. He tzatzti boy, I looked at him, v'lo reisi boy dam bris. I didn't see, he's not fully blooded. The blood of the bris, in the place where the bris is, there's no blood there. Amarti la, I said to her, Amtini la, wait, achi yipol by dama, until it'll be fully blooded. And she waited, and she made the bris, and the baby lived. And they referred to him as Nasan Bavli on my name because I saved his life. Zog the Mishnah. Marchitzin es hakotten. You can wash a baby, you can bathe a baby, ben livnei mila or ben lachara mila. So in those times, they would bathe the baby before the bris and after the bris. So this is something that's necessary for the baby to be able to make the bris. So this can be done on Shabbos before the bris and after the bris. Then the Mishnah says, umizalfin olav biyad. You can sprinkle the baby with water, avaloi bekeli, but not sprinkle water on him with a vessel. The Gemara is going to ask that it seems to contradict itself. It just says you can bathe the baby before and after, and then it says you could only sprinkle with your hands. Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah says, Marchitzen es hakotten b'yom hashlishi. You could also bathe the baby on the third day of the bris. Shechaliyas b'Shabbos, if it falls out on Shabbos. Shenemar, it says in the story by Shechem, Vayihi b'yom hashlishi b'yosem koyevim. On the third day of the bris, they were in pain. So the third day of the bris, there could be a sakana, and therefore even on Shabbos, you're allowed to bathe the baby. Zok the Mishnah, another halacha. Safik ve'androgenis. A safik, which Rashi says is a baby that's born in the 8th month. And as we'll see in the Gemara on the next daf, a baby born in the 8th month is considered to be a baby that can't survive, and therefore is not chayiv in a bris on the 8th day. Or an androgenis, which is a suffix zachar or a nekeva. So these two cases, since it's a suffix, if they're chayiv in a bris or not, ein mechal in all of us Shabbos, we are not mechal Shabbos for the bris. Rabbi Yehuda mater b'androgenis. Rabbi Yehuda says that we do make a bris for an androgenis, as we'll see in the Gemara. Frag the Gemara. In the Mishnah, the Reisha seems to contradict itself. Ha'amrit Reisha, in the beginning the Mishnah said, Marchitzin, you could bathe, you could wash the baby. And after that it says, only mizalfim biyat, you could only sprinkle with water with your hands. Answers the Gemara, Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Baravua damri tarvayu. Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Baravua both said, Keitzat katani. When it says in the Mishnah mizalfin, it's an explanation for the marchitzin. It's telling you could wash the baby, but it's telling you how. You could only do it by hand. So this is how you read the Mishnah. Marchitzin is a cotton bein lefnei mila bein lacha mila. You could wash the baby before the bris and after the bris. But keitzad, how do you wash the baby? Mizalfin olav biyad. You sprinkle water on him by hand. Avaloi bekeli, not with a vessel. That's the pshat that both Rav Yehuda and Rabbi Baravua said. So Rava said about this pshat, but for marchitzin katani, the Mishnah uses the term marchitzin, which means to wash, not just to sprinkle. So how could you say that the second half of the Mishnah, when it says mizalfin, it's an explanation to the word marchitzin? Elo Rava, so Rava says another pshat, hachi katani. This is how you have to learn the Mishnah. Marchitzin es hakotan. First, the Mishnah is telling you you could wash the cotton, you can bathe the cotton, bein l'fnei mila, bein la'achra mila, before the bris and after the bris. B'yoyim harishayin, on the first day, on the day of the bris, kedarkai, the regular way that you would wash a cotton. U'b'yoyim hashlishi, on the third day, shechaliyas b'Shabbos, that it falls out on Shabbos, mizalfin olav biyad. Then the Tanna Kamma is saying you're only allowed to sprinkle water by hand. Avaloi bekeli. You're not allowed to sprinkle water on the baby with a vessel. And Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah argues, Marchitzin es hakoten b'yom hashlishi shechaliyas b'Shabbos, that you are allowed to wash the baby regular, not just by hand. You're allowed to wash the baby also on the third day that fell out on Shabbos. Shenema v'yiv b'yom hashlishi b'yosem koyevim. The third day in Shechem, that was when it was painful, and that's when you're allowed to wash the baby on Shabbos. So according to Rava's pshat, he's more makel, that the Tanna Kamma says you're allowed to wash the baby regular on the day of the bris, before and after the bris. The argument between the Tanna Kamma and Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah is only regarding the third day of the bris. Tanya Kavasi de Rava, we learned in Abraisa like the pshat of Rava. Marchitzin hakoten bein lefnei mila bein lacha mila b'yom rishon kedarka. The Tanna Kamma says you can wash the baby before and after the bris on the first day regular. U'b'yom hashlishi, on the third day of the bris, shechaliyas b'Shabbos, then mizalfin olav biyad. That's where the Tanna Kamma is machmer and says you could only sprinkle the baby with some water by hand. Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah argued regarding the third day, marchitzin es hakoten b'yom hashlishi shechaliyas b'Shabbos, you wash the cotton even on the third day regular even when it falls out on Shabbos. Although we don't have a proof for this, there is a zeicher for this. Shenema, the pasuk says, on the third day, and they were in pain. So we see that on the third day there's pain, and therefore you're allowed to wash the baby on Shabbos because it could be a sakana. And then the Braisa concludes, if you're sprinkling the baby, you don't sprinkle not with a cup, not with a plate, not with another vessel, it should be done by hand. So the Gemara clarifies Pshat in the Braisa, Ason l'Tanakama. The last point over here, when it talks about sprinkling the baby, that's only according to the Tanakama. According to Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, you can wash the baby regular. So this last point goes on the Tanakama. Now the Gemara asks, why are we saying that from Shechem there's no raya that the baby on the third day is in a sakana? It's only a zeicher. We see over there that they were koyavim and they were so weak and in pain. So doesn't this prove that it could be a sakana? So why is it only a zeicher? And it says the Gemara, mishum de godoy le'salik bisra, mishum de godoy le'salik bisra hai, because the healing of the flesh of an adult does not heal so quickly. Cotton, however, a baby, solik baby israhai, the flesh heals quicker, and therefore it could be that on the third day it's not a sakana anymore. So that's why it's not a raya from that case. Talk to Gemara, Hahud asel kamei de Rava. There was an individual that came to Rava regarding making a bris on Shabbos. Oiri leikishmaite, and Rava paskint for him like the way he understood the Mishnah, which is that according to the Tanakama, you're allowed to wash the baby on the day of the bris, before and after, regularly. You don't have to sprinkle by hand. Not like the pshat of Rav Yehuda and Rabbi Bar Avua that said that according to the Tanakama, even on the day of the bris, you could only sprinkle by hand. So he paskened l'kula like his pshat of the Mishnah. And then what happened? Ichlash Rava. Rava became very weak. Omar, so he said to himself, Ano bahadi targimno desabi lomali. Why was I taking issue with this interpretation of our Mishnah of the older Amoraim? So he thought that he became sick because he was makel for somebody to do something on Shabbos against what the older Amoraim paskin, that according to the Tanakama, you're not supposed to do this. So Amrulei Rabbanan leRave, the Rabbanan said to Rave, but v'hatanya k'vasei demar, we brought a braisa that supports your interpretation of the Mishnah. Amalahu, so Rav responded, but masnisin k'vasai deke. If you look closely in the Mishnah, you'll see that the lashon of the Mishnah is more precise according to the opinion of Rav Yehuda and Rabbi Bar Avua. That said that according to the Tanakama, you could never wash the baby regular, even on the first day, when it says mezalf and olav biyad, that's even on the first day, by the before and after the bris, it's only by hand, to sprinkle by hand. Where is this meduyik in the Mishnah? The lashon of the Mishnah is that Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah said, "Marchitzin es hakotten b'yoyim hashlishi shechali es b'Shabbos." You wash the cotton on the third day that fell out on Shabbos. You wash the cotton on that day. Now, if you're going to tell me that the Tanakama was saying that you could never wash a baby on Shabbos, not on the day of the bris, not on the third day of the bris, not before, not after, you can't ever wash the baby on Shabbos. So Tanakama, again, the Tana is saying you could only sprinkle the baby with water. So Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah. So this explains what Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah comes to say. Mar chitzen. You say mezalfen. You say you could only sprinkle the baby with water. I say no. Mar chitzen. You can wash and bathe the baby. Ele yomret. What if you're going to say Rava says, like my pshat, like Rava said, that Tanakama mar chitzen b'yom harishin ka'ama, that even the Tanakama also holds that on the day of the bris, before and after the bris, you can wash the baby. He's only arguing regarding the third day, that on the third day, then you can't wash the baby. Then you only have to sprinkle with water. So, Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, why does the Mishnah say that Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, he was the one that came and said that you could wash the baby? It shouldn't have said that. It should have said, Af marchitzen mi boyele. He should have said, Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah comes to add, not only like the Tanakama that you can wash the baby on the first day, but you can't on the third day. Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah is saying also on the third day you could wash the baby. Should have used the term af, because even according to the Tanakama, the way Rava interpreted the Tanakama, you could wash the baby on the first day. So therefore, the lashon of the Mishnah marchitzin is mashma like Rav Yehuda and Rabbi Baravu's pshat that according to the Tanna Kama you can't wash the baby ever, even not on the first day that you're making the bris. Kiyas of Rav Dimi, when Rav Dimi came, Omar Rabbi Lazar, he said in the name of Rabbi Lazar that halachic Rabbi Lazar ben Azariah. We paskin like Rabbi Lazar ben Azariah that you could wash the baby on the first day, on the third day, because it could be a sakana. Havuba b'marava. The question was asked in Eretz Yisrael. Harchatzas kol gufay. When the Mishnah here talks about bathing the baby, are we talking about bathing the entire body? Or harchatzas mila, or maybe we're talking about just washing off the place of the bris milah. Amalahu ahum Rabbanan. So one of the Rabbanan, the Rab Yaakov Shmei, and his name is Rab Yaakov. So he said, Mistavra harchatzas kol gufay. It's logical to say that the Mishnah here is talking about washing the entire body of the baby. If you're going to say what we're talking about is just washing the place of the milah, would this be any different? Would this be any worse than any makkah, any wound you have that you're allowed to wash it off with hot water on Shabbos? Rav said, we don't hold ourselves back of putting hot water or oil on a wound on Shabbos. So that's allowed by any makkah. There would be no chiddush that this is allowed to be done over here, b'negei to the bris. So the Gemara asks, wait a minute, there is a difference. Maskef la Rav Yosef. So Rav Yosef asks, v'lo yishani lecha ben chamen shehochmu b'Shabbos lechamen shehochmu me'erev Shabbos. It's no difference to you when we're talking about the hot water that Rav spoke about that could be used by any wound, which is hot water that was heated up before Shabbos. And over here we're talking about hot water that was heated up on Shabbos itself. That would be the chiddush, even if it's not bathing the entire body, even if it's only for the makkah mamila. Maskef la Rav Dimi. Rav Dimi asks back on this question of Rav Yosef, how do you know that this Mishnah is talking about bathing the baby with hot water that's being heated up on Shabbos itself? Where does it say in the Mishnah we're talking about hot water that's being heated up on Shabbos itself? Maybe they're talking about hot water that was heated up from before Shabbos. So therefore, the question that we asked before stands, that if you can't bathe the entire body of the baby, so then it's no different than any other wound. This was the question that Rav Dimi asked. So Amar Abaye, when he heard this question, he said, I wanted to answer this question, but v'kadam v'shani le Rav Yosef. Rav Yosef hat ma'is gechabt. Rav Yosef came ahead of me and he answered the question. And he said, it says in the Mishnah that it's a sakana. That's the reason why you're allowed to bathe the baby. So if it's a sakana, for sure, we're talking about water, even water that's being heated up on Shabbos itself. Itmer nami. We learned also the statement Kiyasa Rav and Amar Abavo, Amar Abalaza, Amrila, Amar Abavo, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, either in the name of Rabbi Lazar or in the name of Rabbi Yochanan, that halacha Rabbi Lazar ben Azariah, we paskin like Rabbi Lazar ben Azariah that you can bathe the baby bein b'chamesh shehuchma b'Shabbos, whether it's hot water that was heated up on Shabbos itself, bein b'chamesh shehuchma me'erev Shabbos, whether it's hot water that was heated up from before Shabbos, bein archatzas kol gufay, whether you have to bathe the entire body, bein archatzas mila, or whether you're only bathing the place of the mila, mipnei shesakana huloi, because this is a sakana for the baby and therefore it can be done on Shabbos. Gufa, now the Gemara brings back what we mentioned before, that Rav said you're allowed to put oil or hot water on a wound on Shabbos. The Gemara brings a machlokes here. So Amar Rav said, Ein meinen chamen v'shemen magabi makeh b'Shabbos. We don't hold ourselves back from putting hot water or oil on a wound on Shabbos. Shmuel says, Neisun chutz l'makeh, you're not allowed to place this as a refuah on Shabbos. So we know that there's a gzeir of Chazal against refuah on Shabbos. You're not allowed to place it directly on the wound on Shabbos, but neisun chutz l'makeh, you put the hot water or oil outside of where the wound is, v'sheises v'yored l'makeh, and it flows and it drips into the place where the makeh is. Meisvei, the question was asked on this, ein neisnin shemen v'chamen al gabi moich. It says in Abraisa that on Shabbos you're not allowed to put oil or hot water onto a moich, onto a piece of cloth. Litan al gabi makeh, to put it as a band-aid on the wound, b'Shabbos. You're not allowed to do this on Shabbos. So what's seemingly the reason? Because you're not allowed to place the water, the hot water or the oil directly on the makkah on Shabbos. So this is a shaila, this is a question on Rav. Answers the Gemara, no, Hassam, there's a different reason. Mishum schita, you're putting it on a soft cloth, there's an issue of schita that you might squeeze out the water or the oil, that's why it's not allowed. Toshama raya against Rav from another brayse. Ein noisten chamen v'shem al gabi moich. You're not allowed to put hot water or oil onto a soft cloth she al gabi makeh b'Shabbos, which is on the wound on Shabbos. So over here, at this point, the Gemara is thinking there's no issue of schita. It's already there on the wound. You're not using it to place it on the wound. It's there, so you're not going to come to squeeze it out. So the Gemara says no, chasam in that case as well. Nami mishum schita. There's also an issue that you can come to squeeze out the oil or the hot water. So it's not a raya for Shmuel. It's not a raya against Rav. Tanya kavosei the Shmuel. We did learn in a brayse like Shmuel. Ein noisnin chamen v'shemen al gabi makeh. We don't put hot water or oil directly on a wound. B'Shabbos avol noisnin chutz l'makeh. You can place it outside of the wound. V'sheisis v'yored l'makeh, and it will flow down into the place where the wound is. Tana Rabbanon. We learned in a brayse. So in one brayse it says noisnin al gabi makeh. You could place on a wound much yavish, a soft piece of clothing, which a soft garment which is dry. V'svoig yavish, a dry sponge. Avaloi gemi yavish, but not a reed which is dry, which has a healing. You could heal it, so that you're not allowed. If you're just putting a moich or a svoig, it doesn't heal it; it's just covering it. So that's allowed, but not a gemi yavish, a dry reed which heals it. V'loi ksisin yaveshin, and not a piece of garment which is dry. So now ksisin is the same thing as a moich. So the Gemara asks the question, kashi ksisin aksisin. So in this brayse, it's a contradiction. In the beginning it says that a moich yavish is allowed to be placed, and then it says ksisin yaveshin, which is the same thing, a dry piece of clothing, a soft cloth. You're not allowed to, you're not allowed to place it on Yom Tov, on Shabbos. And it says the Gemara, loy kashi. It's not a question. There's a difference if it's a new piece of cloth that was never used before for another wound. So if it's new, so then it has a healing, it has an ability to heal, so that's not allowed. But hobatiki, if it's an old piece of cloth that was used before already, it doesn't heal. And that's when it said that you're not allowed to put it on and that's when it says that you're batiki, the old one, you're allowed to put on the makkah. Omar Abaye said, Shmami no, from here we see that Hanik Sisin Masu, that these pieces of cloth, a fresh piece of cloth that you place on a wound, it has the ability to heal the wound, and therefore it's not allowed to be done on Shabbos.